Hi everybody, today we are talking about humidity, and I'll start off with adjusting this probe. As you can see here, it's touching the soil. So as a good practice, you want an air measurement of humidity at roughly shell temperature. So we'll pin that down there, but you don't want it touching the soil essentially. So for these hatchlings, I prefer a higher touch of humidity, or else you will be looking like Digger here, who was kept in sawdust by its previous owner. We want to raise the rest, these three, Walker, Dodger, and Trevor, to have nice smooth shell growth. So we want to offer high humidity in sections like this humid hide. Now, in that humid hide, I bet you that could reach 80 to 90%, even 100% humidity. Then we have drier spaces, like inside my clay pots, I find dry out a little fast, so they don't get spritzed as much. And then in the open, nice areas, we still have as low as 50. We never really want much lower than 50 near this lamp. We're a little low. For the hatchlings, I would like a little bit higher humidity in the 60, 70, 80 range, ideally. To combat this, I multiple times a day, usually with an open tabletop, I like the airflow. I like how things dry out. I'd give things a spritz. The spider plants love it. Just be careful not to spray your electrical, of course. Safety first. See how that clay pot just absorbs it. And I've heard some wives' tales like you're not supposed to spritz your tortoises when they're underneath the heat lamp. It's not something I really stress over. I haven't seemed to have an issue yet, but and maybe wives' tale isn't the best term these days. Maybe it's just we'll say a friend's tale. And I find with the adults, if they get a spritz in the morning, their entire day is almost more activity filled. But I don't like spritzing them without the heat going, because a cold and wet tortoise is kind of a recipe for a respiratory infection. So if you have a redfoot or any other species that requires a higher humidity, I recommend always providing a heat source as well as the proper humidity. Cold and wet just never works out. And just like that, we pop that humidity into the 70 range. That's plenty enough for these characters to go to bed. I don't provide overnight heat for my Hermans. They get down to a room temperature of I bet you it's 18. I bet you it's even low as 15 in the middle of the night when there's no heat on. And when things cool off, we just allow that be. I think it's the best thing for these characters. I don't ideally like the small ones being colder than 12, 13 Celsius. But the adults are a little hardier. And there's people out there that are pressing temperatures as 5 Celsius. I don't try to allow my tortoises to get that cold, but they are, I believe, prepared for it to some extent. Oh, that tortoise is a good walker over there. Look at those proud strides. Sign of a and Digger, I don't want you climbing on them little ones. Such beautiful markings, beautiful shells. Spider plants, they really help humidity, I find. They regulate it, they create more of it, and just a misting, really. Like this one here was ate by the adults, and look at it, it's just thriving. I love spider plants. I could talk with them all day long. They're so hardy. They provide flowers, which I believe are a great addition to the diet when they stem out and create flowers. The babies, they easily create more if they ever get trampled and you want to replace them. But as they're a grass, they're not exactly the most nutritional of diets to offer a Mediterranean species that would benefit best from a diet of weeds, plants, and flowers. So sometimes when I find a tortoise being too randy, like that one there was biting at that little guy's shell. That's the smallest tortoise, so I would prefer not to have that. There's a pecking order of space, but I attempt to correct. So like this here, like if you want to do that and I'm aware of it, I'm gonna move you away from the heat there. So you can just have a timeout, and we'll let this little one. Everyone's gaining weight, so I'm really not too concerned. In the last month, Dodger gained 10 grams. Little Dodger there. Walker beside him, he gained 9 grams. And Trevor, that thick one back there, gained 12 grams in roughly a month period. So the last month was a shipping month, so some would be, I would say that it was an off month. So I think they're growing well more than fast enough. I was only aiming for a slow growth of 3 or 4 grams. They're leaving food left over. I feed mostly a diet there. That's mostly mallow, ribgrass, plantain, and some dried dandelion from last year's foraging. And they're leaving a decent amount of it every day. For fresh, they definitely nibble up the ribgrass plantain first. It disappears. And see, look at this. This is a sign of dominance, even in a smaller tortoise. So I'd rather not have this larger tortoise. Like that one's got a year and 100 grams on these characters almost. So I'm really not keen on it dominating the smallest one there, Dodger. Like Dodger is at least 100 grams smaller than Digger. So if that's the case with Digger, like I'll go put you in the corner repeatedly. Like you could bask, just sit there and bask. But if you want to be dominant when they're small like this, it's just something to be aware of. Oh, I really want to see Dodger thriving. He came the smallest, or he or she came here the smallest of all the tortoises, and I would like it to catch up to at least Walker, who's 10 to 15 grams heavier than it. So there's 3 different sizes. They're all beautiful tortoises from Prairie Hills Tortoises out of Manitoba, Canada. I've been super impressed with these 3 hatchlings. No issues as of yet. Here's Trevor, that demon, just always chomping. That one will be a heavy grower. It just never seems to leave its food alone, even though it's only, like, this is dried mallow that I soak in water for about 15 minutes when I'm making coffee in the morning. And it softens up, and this is just the dust from the bottom of the bag. Like, I could show you the bag here in a moment before I sign off. But dried feeds, just awesome. Oh, I just love these little characters. So, before the end of the video here, I will show you the home gym. And just like that, that is dried mallow. There could be dust from who knows how many other safe feeds. This is the bag I just forever toss in dried feeds. And it's the majority of it's mallow usually, but as I get randoms, it gets tossed in there. Christmas cactus flowers and anything that I can get from friends and family. Dried out spider plant even gets tossed in there because my uncle brings me it. He thinks it's tortoise superfood, but it gets tossed in there. It's just a bulker. There's no harm done by it. But these yard waste bags work really good for dried weed storage. And it just saves on food by, instead of the average person buys lettuce, and I don't have to. I truly don't have to. So now that we've got the humidity up with these characters, and at 76, 68, and 76 across the board, this is enough for nighttime. I don't want them being damp going to bed. So this is a coir soil with, there's some sand, clay that I just like naturally found. The coir's from a grow store, and I find it's, as long as it's nice and deep. You want your soil as deep as your tortoise is long. That is to my second knuckle in the middle there. So that's roughly as long as digger is there. So they can dig. The substrate is what it is. Humidity is relevant. Thanks so much for tuning in. Until next time, your pal Hops and Scotch signing out. Please subscribe.